In searching for the causes of language change over time, we often find that the motor is phonological change, subtle sound shifts, sometimes sound shifts in consonants or vowels or combinations thereof that are objectively, whereas objectively as anything can be in something as complex as historical linguistics, are objectively pretty difficult to pronounce. But more often than not, we actually don't have any clear reason, any clear motive that we can posit for why a particular sound change or sound shift was adopted by a group of speakers. For example, I have no idea, maybe someone else does, why the Tuscan language in the Middle Ages, and probably still today, has this tendency to palatalize unstressed interconsonantal vowels. We spoke about this in another video. It's why we actually have margherita and not margarita as a pizza. Even though the woman's name, the girl's name, Margarita, has an A and not an E in it. But one potential explanation can sometimes be substrate languages. So in the case of Latin, which spread through the imperial expansion of the Roman Republic and then later Empire, it was a language that was adopted by people who previously spoke other languages, right? It was a language of prestige, and so naturally, if you were some Gaul in the middle of modern-day France and you wanted to speak the language of commerce, of bureaucracy, of law, you would probably learn Latin. But the language that you spoke beforehand would probably have some kind of degree of transference, right? Well, I'm talking about all of this because I found a really interesting segment of Ramón Menéndez Pidal's excellent Historia de la Lengua Española. And in this segment, he forwards a pretty interesting hypothesis. And that's that some of the most iconic sounds in the Spanish language might actually be the consequence of the various Celtic languages that the Ibero-Celt population spoke during the period of Roman conquest and integration into the Roman Empire. The pervasive transition from Latin words that begin with the fricative f to the Spanish silent h. For example, the fact that Latin has ferrus, but Spanish has hierro. The fact that Latin factum became Spanish hecho, etc., etc. The heavy rolled R in Spanish, for example, in perro, and even the pretty consistent transition from the labiodental fricative v to the bilabial plosive b, all might be the consequence of the fact that Latin was adopted by speakers who were speaking languages in which those phonetics were heavily used. And it certainly seems as though we have some degree of attestation for this. This is what Menéndez Pidal at least states. I'm quite interested in this idea. One of the challenges to this is that we do still see some of these forms, such as, for example, labiodental v in medieval Spanish. Like, we're pretty certain that medieval Spanish still had a v sound in it. Maybe this is somewhat of an open question, but it's certainly something that's worth thinking about. Is it possible that a lot of the most iconic features of the Spanish language, at least phonetically speaking, are actually the consequence of the pre-Roman languages that existed in the Iberian Peninsula? I quite like this idea. I think it's an interesting area of investigation. I'd like you to leave your thoughts below. Many of you are quite well educated in historical linguistics, and I always learn something from your comments, so I'd greatly appreciate that input because I'm genuinely quite curious about this, and it's not something I've found a lot of information on elsewhere. So for now, I'll say muchas gracias, and I hope to see you in the next video. Hasta entonces.